Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopkina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional, pointing you to the most important things that are happening in the AI landscape. The articles that we're going to review are at gaiinsights.com/articles. Please follow along and tell us what you think as we discuss those articles. Let's proceed today. I have John, Paul, Vivek, who is Makhatya. So
You got it.
Pause every time. Thank you. So Vivek is at Pfizer, working to educate salespeople on the various molecules that they're working on with the doctors. So this is a critical role within Pfizer, and he brings that angle to our discussions. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you.
All right, let's proceed to the first one, Ankash.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Meta, and Meta is partnering with Midjourney on AI image and video models.
Yes, an interesting announcement. Adam, what did you think about
Probably
this?
optional for the busy, time-starved enterprise AI leader who has much bigger challenges that are far more pressing and relevant. Super interesting news. Meta has tried to, through acquisition and development of their own, build some AI, image and video models. This is a bit of a concession, but at the same time, a very strong strategic partnership. They've tried to buy Midjourney before Midjourney remains independent. In this case, they will actually not just have Meta using Midjourney technologies, but they will partner on the development of models. So it's a deeper shift, I guess, in the marketplace, but possibly important just to flag it because these are two of the biggest names in the space right now, and so it's a pretty big piece of news, but probably optional.
It's a strategic indication from Meta, it appears. What did you think about this?
Yeah, I was optional on this. Obviously he's trying to build up capability. We'll see if this series of acquisitions and acqui-hires and unbelievable pay actually works. So it's a real experiment because I've never seen an organization hang together that has this kind of disparity in culture and compensation. But he's pulled it out before.
Yeah, Vivek, what did you think?
Yeah, I was optional as well. I think this news is more relevant for the customers who use their social media platforms because they'll get improved quality of the outputs. But overall, I think to John and Adam's point, this is consolidation, investment rerouting. They used to have a really good model, but it's not in the quality of Midjourney. So they're maybe focusing a lot more on other aspects of generative AI.
Okay.
It's interesting to see that option.
So going optional, Paul, Ankash, disagreements?
No, definitely optional. People read in the information. He's also put a hiring freeze on these oversized packages. I do think it's notable that you were watching Apple and Facebook struggle to get in the game and speed. So it's interesting to see if these big two companies can actually get their act together and get out there quickly. But he's certainly spending. I think they're going to do 3 or 4 more acquisitions here.
Yep. So we'll see what develops. An experiment in John's lingo. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from Epoch AI, and it talks the.
Yeah, it's an overview from Epoch, usually a pretty interesting analysis. What did you think about this one?
Yep. So Luda, I was between optional and important for this one. So this particularly lays out how different model providers, so whether it is OpenAI or Anthropic or Grok, they are using multi-agent systems, and these multi-agents are working in parallel to solve different parts of the problem. And they also mentioned that this is costly right now, and they suggest ways in future in how these models by default will work in parallel to solve these problems. While this is a good primer on multi-agent systems working in parallel, I am not sure what the AI leader will do with this. So that's why I was optional on this. But if someone wants to understand how these systems work in parallel, then I think it's a good primer.
Okay, so optional for you, it does flag that it's much costlier, and they haven't yet figured out how to contain the cost, right?
Yeah,
John, what do you think?
I was between optional and important, leaning toward optional. You know, this issue we've been talking about for some time, that, you know, we think the architecture and it's kind of look like this that we have here on the screen. You know, you want to do something, and it says user request, but it could be any request. Could come from a machine, could come from, you know, whatever, who knows. And then the thing that's missing here, I think, is the two big things. One is that it's not just going to be agent and LLM. It's going to be other kinds of models. So you're going to have deterministic models, statistical models, traditional machine learning. You're going to have database lookups. And that parser, if you think of the thing on the left-hand side as a parser, it's going to parse whatever the query is, or whatever the need is. It's not just called a query. And then the other thing that's missing here, two other things, I guess. I said two, but it's really three. One is the truth function. There's going to be some, or, you know, quality function that says, okay, this is a high enough quality for what we're trying to get done here. And then it's going to be a reassembly function, right? That's going to say, okay, we're going to repackage all the output from these different models and so forth. So for me, it's harder in terms of understanding what the future is going to be. But you know, for the naive reader, I think it's a good thing. So I'm in between.
Okay. All right. Vivek, what's your thinking? Optional?
I was exactly the same. I was leaning a little bit more towards important because it does give us, you know, I like these guys the way they write, and it's a good pro and con list of what these systems can do. And we know that this is a paradigm shift, right? All of the new orchestrations and new production grade applications being developed with enterprises are using this sort of multi-agent systems where you have someone to do one task, then someone to review the other task, and then, you know, kind of, you know, building out from there. So it's a good kind of summary of this changing trend, and that's how I was leaning a little bit towards important, but I'd be
okay. Adam, technically, they call out a couple of things that haven't been really resolved. The coordination between the agents is hard coded. If they let it go, they will step on each other's toes. So that coordination needs to get figured out, and it's essentially an experiment. So, what do you think? Optional importance in your book?
I was pretty much in the same camp as everyone, leaning a little probably more towards important. It couldn't hurt. I agree with John's analysis that there are some things missing here that are very important. It's a bit light, a bit high level, and at the same time, as Vivek said, I think as well, it's a really good primer, right? And it does portray. For someone who's trying to understand about multi-agent, who's heard about multi-agent. I mean, even just this very first paragraph, just above here on the page, where it mentions in that one paragraph, you know, it gives you a very quick snapshot of the landscape. You could probably just read the first few minutes of this article and get some value out of it.
Okay, Ankash, what's your view?
Important after hearing Adam Luda.
Okay, Paul, you cut it, please. Say
No,
important option.
Definitely optional. These are nuances of architecture, and our AI leader, if they're paying attention, knows that it's got multiple components. So optional.
Yeah, I was hugely optional because I think it's a good primer, but it's confusing and scary in some sense. So I thought we'd better spare the leaders for now. So optional it is, since I have the chalk. So let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI, and it's a case study about Blue Jay's approach for scaling.
Uh, yes. So again, let's Akash, could you repeat the title? You broke up a little bit.
Sure, Luda. So the
I can go through it. So it's go ahead, Akash.
No, go ahead, Vivek. This is your.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Pankaj. This is the article. It's a nice use case by Blue Jay's sort of the problem they're trying to solve is tax research, which is often slow, fragmented, and inconsistent. GPT 4.1, again highlighting OpenAI's model, and they've already shown several benefits. So they are using this direct pipeline to answer questions around tax questions. The research time is reduced by 2.7 hours per week. Overall, 70% weekly usage, and additionally, I think it was they're leveraging what I found was salient, and why I was leaning important on this particular specific use case is that they highlight that when you combine domain knowledge and the technology knowledge, because all of these folks who built this model were they had both together led to these gains. So I think that's a good lesson for AI leaders to have your domain next to build better systems than just the normal digital teams who build within your organization. So I was leaning a little bit more towards important.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. They also actually, we talk about self-learning systems, and LLMs are certainly self-learning. What they do here is let the users press the error button, and then it goes immediately into the loop of verifying, adjusting what the mechanism is. So it's really, they don't leave it to chance. They hard code it in, if you will. And as a result, it's only 1 out of 700 requests are actually wrong. So this is quite a significant learning. What did you think about this, Adam?
I was between important and essential, actually. And the more I sit here and think about it, the more I'm going to make the case, I think, for essential. It's got some great metrics, but we don't hear enough, perhaps, I guess, which should be taken away from this, talked about GPT 4.1 as a model. So I'm surprised to see this from OpenAI. You could say it's a product announcement, but it's also a bit of an awareness campaign, because what this customer is doing, they part of my thought at first was like, are they just sort of talking about the outcomes, or do they go into detail about what they really did? And there's a lot that we could take away. There's the way they use GPT 4.1 with the RAG, retrieval augmented generation, the way they did the benchmarking, continue to evaluate in a framework against Claude, Grok, Gemini. And it's interesting that in their benchmarks, GPT 4.1 continued to win in the things that mattered most to them. And I think whether GPT 4.1 wins or not, the modeling that's done here in terms of the thought leadership of having an evaluation framework like that, to be able to say, yes, we did look at all 5 of these models, and yes, for what we're trying to do, this is the best one, and here's why, and we'll continue to test them and have those sorts of processes in place, is just great thought leadership loops. And the ability for it to continue to refine and get better through having that model as a supervisor over the feedback, right? They aren't retraining the model, but the model's actually being a witness to all of this feedback and learning about how it can perform better as a result. So there's just so many great things to take away, and it's from OpenAI, who's the leader in the space.
Okay, well, essential proposal from Adam. What did you think, Akash?
I was also between important and essential for this one, Luda, just for the reasons that Adam mentioned. It's a great case study, simple implementation, but a lot of domain expertise went into this. So really great example of a mixture of both.
Okay, well, John, Agree?
Yeah, I was important on this one. I could be convinced it's essential. I think I think Anna makes a great point about where the locus of improvement is, and it is really, that's a huge design point and well articulated here. I'm on the board of a public company called Infuse Systems. We do durable medical equipment, and as soon as I read this, I did send it to our CFO to make sure that he was up to date on it. So certainly practical in my view. So I could go essential.
Okay.
Well, I think the first thing, we need to send all our analysts back to analyst school, but you got to be definitive on your things. Remember, John always has a strong opinion. So I think, Adam, you make a strong point. Essential it is.
I was so
Okay.
prepared for you to shoot me
Essentially
down, Paul. I was just waiting for it.
No, it really is well written, has all the data about how they did it, not in that much detail, but
Ludo, that's part of the beauty of it, is that they actually don't need that much detail because they're not doing anything complicated.
that's true. That's
just basic RAG with GPT-4.1, but they have the results and they have a lot of good thought leadership.
and the feedback.
And the feedback.
Yeah. Okay, so essential it is. Let's proceed then.
Okay, the next one comes from McKinsey, and it is titled "Mind the Gap: How Operation Leaders Are Pulling Ahead Using AI."
Okay, yeah. A study of 100 companies and what they're doing, and in a lot of dimensions, and quantifying the gap between what they're doing and what's happening in the industry. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I was between optional and important on this one. In terms of, I thought that this notion of looking at where things have moved over the past couple of years, because they went back and looked at where things were in the 4 to 5 years ago, and then where leaders have been. I thought this notion of Exhibit 2 here, I don't know what you have in front of you, Akash, here, that this notion of lack of expertise, culture, data availability, unclear ROI, time, and resources, that's not a bad list. I would also context that and executive understanding. And that does show up on Exhibit 3, where there's much more accountability by executives for the leaders. So as I review this, actually, I'm packing myself into a higher rating because it is what we're finding in organizations. It's basically those organizations that commit, do get they're doubling down and they're pulling ahead. So I guess I'll tack myself into essential on this one. So because it does get to the organizational issues. I read this last night. I was less impressed. As I review it now, I'm going to essential.
I see. Okay, Vivek.
So I won't speak directly to. I will speak to me first, and I was optional on this article. There's some contradiction. There's some contradiction within this article itself, and I was comparing it to the more recent MIT article that everyone's quoting as well, right? So they first talk about that leaders increasingly build in-house, 89% versus 50% of the laggards, but still use external partnership. Then in the next paragraph, they say, well, the leaders are also using 63% are using external, while the laggards are only at 30%. So there is some contradiction in here, because I think what they're trying to weave the story is really that the partnerships are very important and you should partner. And leaders are less likely to partner with startups and academia. I kind of disagree in that sense, because all of the data that we've seen so far is that these domain experts or vertical startups that have very deep domain knowledge are actually very successful at delivering value. So that's sort of my perspective. That it's a little bit talking the book if I'm channeling Tim here. So I was more on the optional side. again, there are a lot of interesting tidbits in here, and understanding some of the relevant blockers and barriers in the organization. I think they've laid those out well, so I could be more towards important, but definitely.
Okay, so optional for Vivek. Adam.
I'd probably split the difference and land on important. I was important to start with. I was definitely important when John finished talking, and I'm leaning towards optional as I listen to Vivek. So I'm probably going to be some in the middle. I think there's insights in here channeling my Tim. This is a back pocket article, right? It's MIT and McKinsey. If you want fodder for why your CEO or your executives need to be more involved and they need to be more hands-on and they need to be showing leadership, and you're not able to convince them, this is one more shot across the bow. And for that reason, it's probably worth at least keeping in the important camp. This one quote in here, it says, in our study, 77% of the ML implementation leaders, so within the organizations that were the leaders in ML implementation, 77% of them had C-level leadership, and 44% were sponsored by the CEO or board of directors. Whereas it was in the bottom 50%, it was half that, right? So it shows that really is an important metric, and it's being backed up by, at least MIT, which is a solid and reputable organization. So it's probably worth.
Okay. So Adam is cutting in the middle. What did you think, Paul?
Oh, hands down, this is essential. This whole couple different things. This whole notion that the leaders are getting further ahead as companies, and individuals who are adopting this are also getting further ahead. The lead is expanding at all points in here. Is just an essential concept. 2, I really agree with that, and the credibility of McKinsey and Microsoft. And 3, we continue to see, to me, a lot of my mind, the AI leaders' forwardability of the article here. And only 5% of the CEOs in my anecdotal stuff are actively involved, and they need to be actively involved with John keeps saying, I'm building this capability. How can you be a wins company and not have your hands all over how we're digitizing intelligence if you think that maybe a third of your white-collar workers might be digitized in the next 5 years here. So absolutely essential.
I was also leaning to essential. I agree with Vivek that the article was inconsistent, but just pointing that there is a gap that is widening, and the most important ones are driven from the top. There's an example of the CTO who stuck to a particular implementation and then won, and then they put it out as essentially another company that's offering that particular process application to others in the domain. So this is critically important, and I think it's a good thing. Okay, going essential.
Read the article last week. It was New York Times, I think it was, talking about how some CEOs are so frustrated the organization are moving forward. And we're working with a company now that wants to get it. What is it, John? I don't want to say anything, but I think 1,000 of their top leaders and executives trained in 7 sessions over 3 weeks. So some of these companies are really looking how you jumpstart the organization learning.
But it has to come from the top. If they don't understand, don't drive it, it wouldn't work. You have to have this clarity and focus to be able to get the culture turned around or built, right?
Yeah, one thing I was trying to find the number of respondents, which I couldn't find, but the notion of going back to the same respondents a couple of years later, I think is very important. It's empirical support for what we think we're seeing in the marketplace, which is the folks who are having success are doubling down. Now I know there's confirmation bias and all the other stuff, but
to that point, I think isn't it from Wharton that they went back to the same people and they found that like in the first year was like 1 or 2 hours a week, and the same people a year later was like 8 to 9 hours.
Yeah, last year there was that report that went 23, 24, and showed that. Yeah, and in fact, we'll review the Nanda thing, MIT thing you're talking about. I do have problems with the methodology that the Nanda folks did. 58 structured interviews. I've done a lot of, anyway, it's a whole.
Yeah. We'll have limitations, and I agree with all of you that I think the salient points are at the top, right? This leaders are going to continue to exponentially move forward. I think that's a really important point for,
Yeah.
and it's a great backup.
The other thing is, these are senior executives allocating budget on a multi-year basis and then increasing after their first experiences with the yield of that budget. You have to believe a lot of people are collectively stupid to do that. And I just don't think hype doesn't drive multi-year investments.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Essentially it is. Let's proceed. We have 2 articles to review. Okay. Go ahead, Ankash, please.
Yes. So next one is a case study from AWS, and it talks about how Infosys Topaz leverages Amazon Bedrock to transform technical help desk operations.
An important area that is relevant across industries. What did you think about this, Vivek?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the other article around the Blue Jays. It's similar type of implementation. For this time, it's for technical help desk, and they have a nice, really nice orchestration and system architecture to handle call handling. And they've already the part that I was leaning that made me this is an important article is just the metrics. They reduced the call handling time by 60%. Automation, 70% of previously human-driven calls are now handled by the AI assistant, and overall the satisfaction has gone up as well. So all of these kind of trifecta, when you add all of those to leaders who want to develop AI systems for customer service, technical support, etc.
So important for you, Vivek? Important. Ankash, where were you on this?
Important for me as well, Luda. I think we discussed a similar case, not a similar case, but from same company, Infosys Topaz, last week as well, which was on technical documentation and use of RAG, right? I think this is another part of that implementation, and it's really, as Vivek mentioned, suitable for different industries. So important for me.
Wonderful. So we're going important on this one. John, Paul, disagree, Adam? Okay. Okay, so going important it is. Let's proceed to the last one, Ankash.
Okay, the last one that we have is a research paper titled Intern S1, a scientific multimodal foundation model.
Yeah, a number of interesting innovations, model focused on science, molecules and the like for research purposes. Very broad scope and very deep understanding of the domain. So what did you think about this, Adam?
So I was probably optional for our leader. It's kind of a big deal though, so I was leaning towards important to at least raise it to their attention. This is licensed under Apache 2.0, so it is completely open source. And one thing I really like in the PDF that they provided, they have these graphs that talk about the performance of these models on general tasks against their capability on scientific tasks. And the extraordinary thing is this model is right up there with Grok 4.03, Gemini 2.5 Pro in terms of both its general capabilities, but it's exceeding all of them on the scientific tasks at the same time in terms of how they fine-tuned it for that. It's an incredible model. It's actually, I was thinking about the multi-agent systems we were talking about earlier tonight. And in a way, that's basically what these mixture of experts are. Underneath the hood, it's determining which of these many models that are embedded into it, including submodels. It has one called, I think, an intern or something as well, which is a vision model. And it can light up, a mixture of expert, it only lights up the parameters of the specialists it needs. A great example of that, the fact that it's open source, the fact that we're getting for science, but also general purpose, an open source model that's right up there with the state of the art, that's fully open source, is probably worth paying attention to and being aware of.
Yeah, so it has, I fed it to the bot because I was I was getting lost in the depth of in the length of the article, and the bot highlighted a number of things that I think are important to highlight. And the fact that they're massive, very science-heavy pre-training data with way better curation, and you can add to it because they built a pipeline that you can feed additional PDFs to that. Then the compression is way, way higher, so it's higher performance. So a lot of innovations here that can massively help the R&D folks. So I was also leaning to important. What did you think,
important for
John?
sure. There's a part of me that wants to make it essential. Here's to me, it's not only the multiple experts, not only the performance, but the multiple reward structure, the mixture of rewards approach. And back to what we're talking about before with our enterprise intelligence architecture, this notion of where the top end models, the complex models are going to be multiple models, multiple experts, but also multiple reward systems and different representation systems for the kind of data and the fact, and they're doing amazing things with very small amounts. Science tends to have very small amounts of data compared to training language models, and so the fact that they're doing different reward structures, training multiple experts on different representation systems, molecules, continuous wave functions, whatever, right? That are so. I wouldn't be surprised to see a breakthrough out of this that is about. You start thinking about this in the context of real world models and the science that can do it and so forth. That this is vitally. I think you want to talk about where the next breakthrough is going to be, or was the scaling laws before? I think it's going to be the semantic scaling, which is going to be a combination of the experts and the rewards and the representation systems, and then some other genius things that combine all that stuff. This is where the next breakthrough is going to be the way the scaling laws did for language.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, let's in the interest of time, let's mark it important and any announcement.
One quick thing, but I do want to highlight both what John said and Adam said, because if we go back 2 years, everyone was talking about these applications using one model. 2 years now, today, we're talking about 5 or 6 models. 2 years from now, I think we're going to be looking at 50 or 100 components. I'm willing to go up and look at the number of components in a Ford T car versus today's automobile.
Yeah,
that's probably gone from 300 to 3,000. And I think we're going to look back on 2025 and think how quaint, Adam, that we had applications that had just 5 or 6 models in them. So,
right, and then we're going to have the electric car, which takes us back down again. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It goes down again. There's all this streamlining. Okay, sounds great. So we have today, and any announcements? Paul, John?
Yeah, a bunch of announcements. Learning Lab tonight is going to be Microsoft Copilot 101. We're seeing a lot of companies ask us for training on that. And the number one thing, the feedback we get now is to slow it and make it even simpler. So we really are starting to see rapid. Okay, so join us 7 o'clock. Second thing, on Thursday at noon Eastern, we're doing a webinar on our new corporate buyer's guide.
Yeah, and for women out there who are interested in AI, women applying AI are having a live networking tomorrow. 300 people are now registered, and it will be at the Timeout Square in Boston, Market in Boston. Okay, today we have 2 essentials, 2 importance, and 2 optionals. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for the comments. We really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vivek.